Alright, good day everyone. I hope everyone had a good weekend. And sorry this is up a little bit late, but we had a really busy weekend for our church, so we're getting into this now. I hope everyone has been doing well with chapter 19. If you have not been, if you've been struggling a little bit, feel free to contact me. But I'm hoping that went well because that's just a continuation of more of what we've been doing. This chapter 20 is the first really new material that we have this quarter, and it's quite it is quite an introduction. And so let's get into this. All right, chapter 20. You have here participles. Now, all this year so far, we have been working with the indicative mood. Participles are the first non-indicative verbs that we're going to be dealing with. Now, they're not actually verbs. They do not have person and number. But as you can see from the title of the chapter, they are called verbal adjectives. Okay, they combine aspects of both verbs and adjectives. Okay, like verbs, they do have tense. Fortunately, with the participles, you do not have as many tenses as the indicative mood. With the participles, we are only going to be dealing with present, aorist, and perfect. They also have voice, the three voices that we've had so far, active, middle, and passive. Some of the tenses, present and perfect, are going to have middle and passive. The aorist is going to have separate middle and then a separate passive. Okay. So they are kind of like verbs in that they have those two verbal aspects there. But then they are also like adjectives because they possess case, gender, and number. Okay, your four cases, and then your three genders, and then singular and plural. So as you can see here, participles, they are quite complicated just right off of the outset. Okay, you have to think of a lot of different categories that these fall in. You get one single participle form, and you can get a lot of information out of it. Okay, participles, they make use of every single element that we have learned so far. They combine things like nouns and adjectives, those case, gender, number, and then they also have those verbal elements too. Okay, so I have long said that this is the most difficult thing that we will do all year. Okay, this is kind of the pinnacle or the peak of the mountain in first year Greek. I've put down here at the bottom, okay, there's both good news and bad news, okay. It is the top of the mountain, so the good news is that from now on it will get easier. The bad news is that we are just starting on chapter 20, and so we're going to have to get through this. All right, but we are going to take 2 weeks for this, so don't get too frustrated if this starts to get a lot. Just slow down, go back in the video lecture, and contact me if you need some extra help. Alright, so participles. First of all, I'm going to give you this basic use of the participles so that we're not entirely talking in abstract, so you kind of have a sense of what role these play in English. Alright, in English, when you translate the participles, a very overly simplistic way of doing this is to simply add the suffix ing to the end of any verb stem. All right. Your present active participles, for example, take, loose, go. In the participle, you're going to have taking, loosing, and going. With the passive, now something is being acted upon. Now we have being taken, being loosed. Okay. In the aorist, when you transition to the aorist, we do not have necessarily past tense. But this is when we go to the aorist participle, it's talking about an action that happens just before the action of the main verb. Okay, the aorist active participle, overly simplistic, again, translation, having taken, having loosed, having gone. And there you have some of these other variations. Okay, aorist passive, having been taken, having been loosed. The participle can also be used as an adjective. Okay, the running man. There, the ing suffix there is your participle. Okay, another way to state the same idea. Sometimes it's a lot clearer to do it this way: the man who is running. Okay, again, that part there, who is running, would be expressed by the participle in Greek. Okay. Now, your forms of Greek participles. First of all, I've put here beware. There are a whole lot of forms, okay, and this is by necessity, all right? Each tense and voice combination, so for example, your present active participle is going to have case, gender, number, 24 forms. Okay, change any one of those things, tense or voice. Now we're moving to present middle passive participle, also has 24 forms. Change to an aorist, also 24 forms. Okay. In the active voice and the aorist passive, your masculine and neuter are going to take third declension forms. If you need to look this up, look at the third declension adjectives that we covered in chapter 18. Okay, your masculine and neuter are going to take third declension forms. The feminine is going to take first declension forms. If you need to go back and review that, the third declension nouns are in chapter 17, pages 117 and 118, to get those third declension patterns. Okay, those are probably the ones that are more difficult and that you'll have to review. The first declension patterns, we've been doing those all year. Those are found in chapter 5. If you need to go back and look at that, then that's fine. Okay, so feminine first declension forms in chapter 5. Masculine and neuter third declension forms are in chapter 17. So let's just get right into this, all right? Starting now, your tense is present, our voice is active, and now our mood is going to change from indicative mood to now the participle. Okay, your masculine forms, I've put here see archon, okay, on page 118 of your textbook. That is because archon, the forms are pretty much identical to this. We are just changing the stem. Okay, we're putting on our familiar verb stem from luo. And here goes. All right, your masculine forms. We have your masculine. Now your four cases are down the side there: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, and then singular and plural. Okay, so nominative, masculine, singular, luon. Okay, similar to the third declension nouns, you have a stem change between the nominative masculine singular and then the genitive masculine singular. You can see it there. Okay, I believe I put something there. Okay, there you go. The red highlight. You can see the stem change there. Okay, luon becomes in the genitive singular luontos. Okay, we have this sort of little connecting piece there, that omicron nu tau in the middle there is kind of just a standard connecting piece. That is your stem change. And then your standard third declension genitive singular ending omicron sigma there, os. Okay, so you have the genitive masculine singular luontos. And it's off of this form that we are going to build all of the other forms. Okay, dative singular, again, based off of that stem change luonti, and then accusative singular luonta. Plural, luontes, luonton, omega nu is always the ending, but be careful, omega nu is on that nominative singular. You know that this is a genitive plural because it has that stem change, okay, that little connecting part, omicron nu tau. Okay, so luonton, omega nu, genitive plural. Dative plural is always this kind of weird form. It's always going to look a little bit different, and this one is luusi, or luusin, with the movable nu, and then accusative plural luontos goes back to the standard kind of change stem there. All right, so there you have your masculine forms of the present active participle. I'm going to skip over the feminine because, as I said before, the masculine and the neuter are using the third declension. Now, there I highlighted the dative plural. There, the weird dative plural form. Now, let's go to the neuter forms here, all right? If you need to, look at soma on page 118. Actually, I think this might be on page 117. I think I forgot to change that. All right, but it is there anyway. I think it's the first chart in chapter 17. All right, so let's start off here again, taking luo. The nominative neuter singular will look a lot like the nominative masculine singular in all of these. Typically, it just gets a short vowel where the masculine gets a long vowel. So here you have luon. Okay, masculine had luon, omega nu. This one has luon, omicron nu. And if you go down to the accusative singular, again, this is a neuter, so the nominative and accusative forms look the same. Okay, if you notice, the genitive and dative forms are identical to the masculine. So lu-on, genitive singular, you got the stem change lu-on-tas, dative lu-on-ti, and accusative, again, same as nominative singular lu-on. Plural, same thing happens. All right, nominative and accusative look the same as each other, lu-on-ta. Then the genitive and dative plural look the same as the masculine plural, lu-on-tone, omega nu, and lu-u-si, that funny dative plural form. Okay, accusative plural, same as the nominative. All right, so once you get the masculine pattern down, you should be able to get the neuter pattern fairly easily. Lots of common forms between the neuter and the masculine. The forms that are not common are common to each other. Okay, the nominative, accusative are the same. All right, moving on to now the feminine forms of the participle, the present active participle. Have a look at this chart here. These are your feminine forms. If you need to review how the feminine works, you will want to look at your first declension endings. That is in Chapter 5. And you'll want to look at the middle column there, the word doxa, because doxa ends in a sibilant or S sound. Okay, doxa there. And the feminine forms of the participle, the active forms, are going to also end in a sigma. Okay, so they have that S sound there. Because of that, you're going to want to be careful. These change their theme vowel only in the singular. Okay, notice the nominative feminine singular is lu-u-sa. And you can see the sigma there on the end of the stem. And you have the alpha ending. But in the genitive singular now, this changes to lu-u-ses. Okay, it has an eta in the ending. And again, it's because of that sigma on the end of the stem. Unfortunately, all of the feminine forms of the participle up until the last, the sort of last paradigm that we're going to look at under the active forms, all of these feminine forms end in a sigma. Okay, so they're all going to do this weird vowel change. Fortunately, it only happens in the singular. So nominative singular, again, lu-u-sa, genitive singular, lu-u-ses with the eta. Dative singular also has an eta, lu-u-se. It has an iota subscript. Please take note of that. And then the accusative singular, lu-u-san, changes back to an alpha. So your two outside forms, the nominative and accusative, have alphas. The genitive and dative have etas. And again, that is a pattern that will hold throughout all of these feminine active participle forms. Now, that switch between vowels only happens in the singular. Notice the plural, lu-u-sai, lu-u-son, lu-u-sais, lu-u-sas. All of those sort of familiar plural first declension endings, that does not change. All right, so some notes on your feminine forms here. The connecting vowels, or that connecting piece there, is omicron upsilon sigma instead of omicron nu tau that you have in the masculine and neuter. Now, because the stem ends in that S sound, okay, the connecting vowel switches between alpha and eta only in the singular, and the plural forms take the standard first declension endings, okay, the I, on, is, os pattern that you always have. All right, moving on now from the present. All right, up to this point, I recommend that you memorize the present active forms of the participle. Okay, either have a look at the forms that I've put up in this video, or go back to your textbook, chapter 20 in the textbook. All right, and get those present active forms down really well, because from here on out we're going to move on, and again we have 24 forms in each of these charts. And if you don't have that pattern down, you're going to have a really hard time. Okay, don't try to memorize, present active, aorist active, and you're getting like 24 new forms, and you're just trying to memorize these cold. Okay, get the present first, get that pattern going, and then sort of see how the variations, or these slight variations between present, aorist, perfect. Okay, and there are enough common forms there that you should be able to get this down pretty easily if you have that present active memorized. Okay. So anyway, let's go on to the aorist active. Okay, a few notes before we get into the forms. Because we are now moving into participles, okay, this is not the indicative anymore, so we do not have an augment going with the aorist. Okay, the first aorist active does not get that epsilon augment at the beginning. Okay. It does, however, still get the sigma at the end. There is no future participle, so there's not going to be any confusion there. The aorist is the only one in the participle that gets a sigma. Okay. So in the first aorist active, you're going to put a sigma at the end of the stem, no augment at the beginning, and then the theme vowel that comes after the sigma is going to be an alpha throughout. Okay, just like the aorist indicative, you're going to have alphas going throughout here. Now that's the first aorist. For the second aorist verbs, we are going to use the second aorist stem change, and then the endings to the second aorist participle are going to be identical to the present active. Okay, I'll put those up, but once you have the present active participle memorized, you have the endings memorized also for the second aorist. The only difference between the present and the second aorist is going to be that change stem. Okay, and I put some examples here at the bottom. Okay, lombano, the stem changes to lob. Lego is this really ugly one. Okay, it changes from Lego to ape. Okay, then lapo, slight change. Lapo becomes lip. And then erkomai, again, this what drastic, ugly stem change. Erkomai changes to elf. All right, but otherwise, you're just going to put present active participle endings onto those changed stems, and now you have an aorist. Okay. But before that, let's go to the second aorist active. Okay, I'm putting the second aorist active because, again, these are identical to the present active, just that stem change. Okay, so masculine forms, you see here harao in the present. The stem changes to that aid. I chose one that has a really drastic stem change so that you can see this. Okay, so horao, the stem changes to aid. So then to that changed stem, we're going to put, and notice here, these are the exact same endings that you had with the present active. Okay, adon, adon tas, adon ti, adon ta. Adon tes, adon tone, adusi, adon tas. If you need to look at that, go back to the masculine forms of the present active participle, and you'll see those endings are the exact same. The only thing that has happened here is we are using now a second aorist stem onto the beginning of these standard present endings, okay, which changes it then to a second aorist. Moving over to your neuter forms, again, okay, if you've had the chance to memorize the present active, these endings should look very easy, okay, adon, adon tas, adon ti, adon, and then your plurals, okay. And then moving on to your feminines, okay, again, stem change, other than that, endings are the same as your present active, okay. And again, there you see the alpha, eta vowel change in the ending there because of the sigmas. All right, so there is your second aorist active. Okay, again, ending same as the present. So you should have those present memorized. Now let's move over to the first aorist. Okay, this is one that gets a slight variation. Okay, again, no epsilon at the beginning. There's no augment because this is a participle, but we are going to put a sigma. I've highlighted where there are differences in red. Okay, so masculine nominative singular, this one is totally different. You just have to memorize this ending. It's completely different from the present. Okay, lusas, with the sigma at the end of the stem and then the alpha. Lusas. Then genitive singular gets a stem change. Okay, so you have lusantas, again, sigma at the end of the stem, alpha instead of the omicron there in the connector. But the ending, notice omicron sigma is the same as the present. Okay. Dative singular lusanti, accusative singular lusanta. Plurals, nominative plural lusantes, then genitive lusantone, omega nu. Lusasi, or lusasin in the dative plural, and accusative lusantas. Okay. Sigma at the end of the stem in all of these, and alphas going through there with that connector vowel. All right, moving on to the neuters now. The nominative singular, you'll have to learn this one, lusan. And once you know the nominative singular, you also know the accusative singular, lusan. They're identical. Then the genitive and dative are the same as the masculine, lusantas and lusanti. Plurals, nominative, plural, neuter, lusanta. Accusative is identical to it. And then the genitive and dative, lusanton, lusasi, same as the masculine plurals. Okay, so I hope that as you're seeing this, you're seeing how that pattern is established and how these endings are similar now to the present. Okay, you're just changing that thing in the middle there, but other than that, it's following the same pattern as the present. Okay, now we go to the feminine. Instead of lusa, now we have lusasa, feminine and nominative singular. And then again, you have this alpha eta change there. Okay, but genitive singular lusases, dative singular lusase with an iota subscript, and accusative singular lusasan. Plurals, just put the sigma and the alpha there in the middle. Other than that, endings are the same as before. Okay, lusasai, on, is, os. All right, now that takes care of your aorist active participle. If you're ready, we can move on then. Moving on now from the aorist active to the aorist passive. If you remember from before, the aorist gets separate middle and passive forms. Confusingly, the aorist passive follows the same sort of pattern as the active forms. Okay, don't ask me why that happens, but it does. Okay, so aorist passives are kind of on the same area as the actives. Okay, again, there is no augment with the participle, so your aorist passive does not get an epsilon at the beginning, but it does get the theta at the end of the stem, just like in the indicative. Okay, telltale sign of the aorist passive is a theta at the end of the verb stem. Your theme vowel after the theta is going to be epsilon. Okay, where we had omicrons in the present and alphas in the aorist, we're going to have epsilons in the masculine and neuter. In the feminine, the theme vowel after the theta is epsilon iota. All right, notice that in all of these form charts, only your tense modifiers and theme vowels change. Okay, that will help you a lot when you're memorizing these. The endings, the very end of those forms will stay the same. Okay, with the exception of these forms that I've highlighted here, and I think I've put all of them in red in the form charts. Okay, so those are the ones that you kind of have to, you just have to memorize new ones with each form chart. Other than that, the endings will be, they will stick to the same kind of pattern. All right, going forward with the aorist passive participle. Now, once again, going back to the masculine, you see there no augment because this is a participle, so you just start out with your verb stem. There is a theta at the end of the stem, and then your masculine nominative singular is luthase. That's the one that you kind of have to memorize. Then your genitive singular has the stem change, as said before, theta at the end of the stem, epsilon instead of an omicron, so you have luthentos. Then from there on, you know the pattern, right? Dative, luthenti, accusative, luthenta. Plurals, luthentes, luthenton, luthesi, that funny dative plural there, be careful of that one. And then accusative plural, luthentas. All right, once you know the masculine, the neuter becomes very easy. Okay, luthen is your neuter singular. Accusative singular is the same, luthen. Genitive and dative are the same as the masculine. Luthentos, luthenti. All right, plural forms, nominative plural, luthenta. Accusative is identical to it. Genitive and dative forms, leuthentone, leuthacee. Moving on from the neuter forms, now we go to the feminine forms. Leuthasa, feminine singular, nominative. Okay. Theta at the end of the stem, epsilon iota is now your theme vowel. And then again, alpha changes to eta in the genitive and dative, leuthasase and leuthase with the iota subscript. Accusative singular leuthason changes back to an alpha at the end. And then your plurals, leuthasai, leuthason, leuthasais, leuthasas. All right, let's move on to the perfect active participle. This will be the last form chart in this active section. All right, the perfect tense in the participle, unlike the aorist, the perfect keeps its reduplication at the beginning. Okay, the aorist does not have an augment, but the perfect does keep its reduplication. With the perfect active, just like the indicative, you get a kappa at the end of the verb stem. And here in the participle, the theme vowel for that little connector section is omicron in the masculine and neuter. Also, I've noticed here the connecting piece between the stem and ending is going to simply be omicron tau, okay, ot instead of ont with the nu in there. In the feminine, the theme vowel after the kappa is we, upsilon iota. And I've put here, take note of the feminine singular, okay? For some reason, this is the weird one, okay? This is the one that there is no sigma at the end of the stem in the feminine singular, so the ending vowels throughout the entire singular are all going to be alpha. Okay, there is no change in that genitive and dative singular from the alpha to the eta. All right, let's get into them. Perfect active participle, masculine forms here. Nominative singular masculine. This is the one that you kind of have to learn. Lelucos, omega sigma here. Notice the reduplication at the beginning. The kappa right at the end of the stem. And then the genitive singular, you have your stem change. So here you have lelukatos. Okay. And then from there, you should know the pattern. Okay, once you get that stem change, lelukati in the dative and lelukata in the accusative singular. Plurals continue the pattern. Lelukates, lelukaton, genitive plural. Lelukasi in the dative plural, that funny, weird dative plural form. And then lelukatas, accusative plural. Moving on to the neuter. You had lelucos, omega sigma in the masculine. You have the short vowel here in the neuter, lelucos, omicron sigma. And then the accusative singular is the same as the nominative. Then in the genitive, you have your stem change, lelukatos, lelukati, dative. Plurals, nominative, neuter plural, lelukata. And accusative plural is the same. Genitive plural, lelukaton. Dative plural, lelukasi. Now here are the weird feminine forms for the perfect active. Okay, notice here, instead of a sigma at the end of the stem, it is lelukuia and iota at the end of the stem there. So we're going to get alphas throughout the entire thing. Lelukuias, lelukuia, alpha with an iota subscript in the dative. And lelukuion, accusative singular. Then the plurals should be no problem. Okay, lelukuii, lelukuion, lelukuiais, lelukuias. All right, congratulations. You have made it through the active forms of the participles. Once you get through this, the rest of these forms are much easier. Okay, when we move to your middle and middle passive participles, instead of having to worry about third declension endings and those weird endings, the weird stem change, okay, these will have consistent stems going throughout. And with these, they take the same endings as the adjectives in chapter 6. Okay, your masculine and neuter will now take second declension endings, those first endings that we learned. And then again, just like before, the feminine take your first declension endings. Okay. You will notice with all of these, there is this sort of connecting part, just like the active had that kind of omicron nu tau connector. Okay, in the middle and passive, the connector is going to be amen in the present. But the nice thing about this is this never changes. You don't have a change in the dative plural. You don't have a change between the nominative and the genitive singular. Okay, the connector is always going to be that omicron mu epsilon nu. Okay, amen. The beginning vowel will change depending on your tense. Okay, so in the aorist, the first aorist middle, it's going to be alpha, so amen with an alpha. Then in the perfect middle passive, if you remember the perfect middle passive in the indicative, there is no connecting vowel on the endings. You just stick the ending directly onto the end of the stem, and here it's the same thing. Okay, there is no connecting vowel. You simply have that men, mu, epsilon, nu, and you put it straight onto the stem. Now, I've tried to be a little bit helpful here. The textbook, if you will notice in the textbook where it deals with the middle and passive forms, on pages 145, I think, oh, check that, 148 and 149, the textbook only gives you the first couple of forms, okay? It doesn't even label them, okay? On page 148, though, you have first present, middle, passive, okay? He has columns there, masculine, feminine, neuter, and then the nominative and genitive singular. Okay? I've decided, let's just make it really clear. I've put the entire chart here for your reference. So, starting out, present, middle, passive participle. Starting again, present tense, you're going to put the verb stem on there, and then we're going to put that connector part, the amen, and then the endings follow the second declension endings. Okay, so lu amenas, lu amenu, lu ameno, omega with iota subscript, lu amenon. Plurals, lu amenoi, lu amenon, lu amenois, lu amenus. I hope these endings are very easy. Okay, these are endings we've been doing since chapter 4. If you need to look that up again, yeah, you can look at chapter 4 or chapter 6. Okay, but yeah, these should be very familiar to you. The only difference is that kind of middle part there, but notice that middle connector part just stays the exact same, and you just plug your second declension endings onto the end of that. Moving on then to the feminine forms, lu amene, lu amenes, lu amene, lu amenane. Okay. Again, omicron, mu, epsilon, nu in the middle there, and we're using our first declension endings now, all etas, because of the ending letter there at the end of the stem is a nu. And then your plurals, familiar first declension endings, lu amenai, lu amenon, lu amenais, lu amenas. Going then to the neuters, lu amenon, accusative singular is the same, genitive and dative forms are the same as the masculine, lu amenu, lu ameno, with an iota subscript there on the dative. Plurals, nominative and accusative are the same, lu amena. Genitive and datives look the same as the masculine plural, lu amenon, lu amenois. Okay, there's your entire present middle passive chart. Moving now to the aorist middle. First aorist middle, remember this one is only middle. Okay, we did the aorist passive separately at, with the active forms before. Okay, so this is the first aorist middle. Again, we're going to add a sigma to the end of that verb stem. The theme vowel for the connector part is alpha. So you have lusamen. And then the endings are the same as before. Okay, with the present, the endings are the same. Lusamenos, lusamenu, lusameno, iota subscript in the dative, and lusamenon, accusative. Then plurals, lusamenoi, lusamenon, lusamenois, lusamenus. Moving to the feminines, I'll go over these really quickly. You should be picking up on the pattern pretty quickly here, though. Lusamene, nominative singular. Lusamenes, lusamene, lusamenein. Feminine plurals, nominative lusamenai, then lusamenon, lusamenice, lusamenas. And neuters, lusamenon. Accusative then is the same as the nominative, lusamenon. Genitive and dative, lusamenu, lusameno, iota subscript. Plurals, lusamena. Accusative, same as the nominative. Genitive and dative, lusamenon, lusamenois. All right, congratulations if you have made it to this point. This is the last form chart of these so many form charts and so many forms of the participle. Okay. This is your perfect middle passive participle. As before, we do get reduplication in the perfect. So you have there that le, lu in the nominative singular. And then, as I said before, we do not have a connecting vowel. Okay, so there's no omicron, no alpha right after the stem. Just put that mu directly onto the end of the stem. Lelumenos. And then once you have that, your endings just proceed from there. Genitive lelumenu, lelumeno, lelumenon. Plurals lelumenoi, lelumenon, lelumenois, lelumenus. And once you have that, yeah, the rest of it should be pretty simple, right? Feminine forms lelumene, lelumenes, lelumene, lelumenein. Same endings as before. We're just doing the perfect middle passive there, okay? And then plurals, lelumenai, lelumenon, lelumenice, lelumenas. Moving to the neuter, nominative singular, lelumenon. Accusative singular is the same. Genitive and dative, lelumenu, lelumeno. Plurals, nominative plural, lelumena. Accusative plural is the same. Genitive and dative plural, lelumenon, lelumenois. All right, finally, we have reached the end of chapter 20. But wait, it's only part 1. Okay, just the forms. We have only covered the forms of the participles. Okay, we're going to have to take basically the equivalent of another week to do the translation and the meaning of the participles. All right, but if you've gotten to this point, you've gotten more than half of the material in chapter 20. Okay, congratulations, you've got the forms down. If you want to know what to do with this, okay, review the forms of the participles. Again, make sure you know those present active participles like backwards and forwards. Okay, once you get that, it's just a matter of knowing the variations in the patterns. Okay, first aorist gets a sigma alpha. Second aorist looks like present tense. Okay, perfect still gets a reduplication, etc. Okay, another note on the patterns, you have here the actives, all of your active forms plus your aorist passive is again in with the actives. Okay, those take your third declension forms in the masculine and neuter. They get first declension forms in the feminine. With the middle and the passive forms, they take second declension forms in the masculine and neuter, and again first declension forms in the feminine. All right, so that is the end of this video lecture, first part of chapter 20. I will put the second part up at the beginning of next week. Just a quick reminder, translations from chapter 19 are due by noon this Wednesday. But the good news is that because chapter 20 is so long, you will not have a translation assignment this week. Okay, we're taking 2 weeks on chapter 20, so next week then I will assign you the translations from chapter 20. Okay, no translations this week. Just get those forms down for the participle and get them down really well. Okay, take the time that you would use to do the homework and just get the participle forms. I know there's a lot. Don't get too discouraged. Just take it slowly. Build on each of these patterns, and you can get these down. All right, so that is it for this week's lecture. Again, I will put my contact information in the description, and you can go ahead and email me if you need to. All right, but other than that, everyone take care. Have a great week. I hope your classes are going well enough. Okay, the video online classes are going okay. If there's anything that you need help with this class, do not hesitate to ask. All right, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, and have a good day and a good week.